Hi everyone, welcome to the Capital Confectioners Day of Sharing. I'm excited to be here with you all today, and thanks to Kyla and the committee for inviting me. In this live today, I'm going to be showing you a little bit about my new FlexiPaste. Kyla thought that'd be really fun to show you. Obviously, sadly, we can't be together, obviously virtually, actually in person. So I'm going to do this set live, showing you a little bit about my FlexiPaste and also showing some of my Flower Pro products and obviously other techniques I use in flower making. Obviously, it was exciting to see a few of you 2 weeks ago, obviously in Fort Worth at the Cake Expo, and I hope to see the rest of you in Austin, obviously next February, and looking forward to that. And obviously some of you are watching from other areas of the country, so we hope you'll come to Austin, and I will be doing a hands-on class after the Austin Cake Show because I'm busy there judging. So anyway, first of all, a couple of things. If you go to my website, nicholaslodge.com, nicholaslodge.com, you're going to click on recipes and templates, and I'm going to be referencing today, going to show you actually a gardenia. This is a gardenia I created with Sydney Galpin, who's obviously one of my closest friends. I call her my little sister, and we created the gardenia for a collaboration earlier this year, and where Sydney did some isomalt work and I did a gumpaste gardenia. And this gardenia uses the FlexiPaste, and this has got a lot of things on, but I'm really just talking a lot about the FlexiPaste and about different uses for it. So this is sort of a perfect case of where the FlexiPaste is so different from regular gum paste. Well, anyway, so on the download, that is goes through obviously basically the things you would need. So obviously these are available on our website, and obviously goes through the step-by-step, which I'm going to go through in a second. So this goes through making the gardenia, has some nice photographs. This is actually the piece Sydney and I did. So Sydney did a beautiful perfume bottle, a gardenia perfume, and obviously some isomalt pearls and a nice bottle there to put the gardenia in. And but it's just, this is a good example of how to use the FlexiPaste, and one of the good examples of using the FlexiPaste. And on the back sheet there is first of all, a discount code. This will give you 10% off. So if you go to nicholaslodge.com for some retail therapy after my session, obviously use that code and that will give you 10% off. And this also has some links to our YouTube channel, which I'm going to talk a little bit later on. And the YouTube channel is obviously where I have dozens and dozens of YouTube videos. And that's also where you will find the YouTube video for making the flexi glue, which I'll talk about in a moment. And there's also, I have nicholaslodge.in. That is my FlexiPaste Flexi Glue video as well, and that is another source where you can find information and watch the video of how to make the Flexi Glue as well. And then also there's some information here about obviously my Flower Pro Ultimate Members Club, which is a weekly membership club, and that is on members.kdsudesign.com. Okay, so anyway, so that's some information there. And when you click on, as I said, the recipe and the template, you'll see the gardenia. And then there's also Flexi Glue. And Flexi Glue is a glue I developed especially for using with my FlexiPaste. Because normal glue, when you make, for example, my classic gum paste flowers, I usually use just regular homemade scratch Tylose gum paste or like Renshaw gum paste. And obviously there are lots of different brands of regular gum paste. But have always used egg white. Now, so using the Flexi paste, because the paste stays flexible, what it means if you use regular egg white or edible glue, once that dries, it dries hard, and then if you have any movement in your petals, the egg white is just going to give way. So the Flexi Glue actually stays flexible with the petals, all right? So especially with flowers like roses, sweet peas, flowers like that, you'll find, as I said, it's going to be much more successful. But also when you're using this to make bows and other elements for cakes, it's a really good product to use. And it's very, very easy to make. A recipe is the download, and then there's a link to the YouTube video where you can watch me making it. And you're just going to use the FlexiPaste, which I'll talk about in a second. So you use 6 grams of that, or a number 10 on the size guide. And then you put it in a microwave bowl. You add half a teaspoon of hot water from the tap, or obviously microwave from a tea kettle. It doesn't have to be boiling. Pour on top, microwave for 10 seconds, use a little spatula, you make it like a roux. What we're really making here is like, for example, a custard or a gravy or roux, we use to thicken. And you're going to mix this up, and then you are going to transfer back into a bowl and add another half a teaspoon of hot water and mix well. And then you take 50 mils, which is a quarter of a cup or 2 fluid ounces of hot water, add this to it, and then you're going to put back in the microwave for 20 seconds using a whisk. You stir it, and then another 30 seconds, and it's going to become thick like custard or gravy. This is the flexi glue. This is what it will look like. So it looks a little bit like a milk gravy. All right, so it's about sort of gravy consistency. All right, and that is what I use to assemble the flowers. And we use it. It looks white, but really it goes on clear. Looks a little opaque. And then if you want to keep it as a shelf-stable product, we use 3 drops of Extend It. This product is a potassium sorbate, which is used in wine making. It's used for candy, centers of candies, and it's basically a mold inhibitor. So you can use this product also in homemade edible glues and other things to make it shelf-stable. If you don't have that, just keep it in the fridge when you're not using it, because like a lot of those products, if you leave it on your counter, eventually it will go moldy. All right, and but it's very, very easy to make. And then when you make it, you store it generally in a jar, like these are little jars that we have on the website, and you just store it in a glass jar, and you can obviously use that. We have 2 sizes, and you can pour that into a smaller jar. Or as I said, I use, this is what I call my glue and egg white pot. These come in a pack of 2, and it has a little rubber stopper in there. So basically this is really convenient. You just use that for your wire or your paintbrush, and then use the rim to take off the excess glue. And then when you finish at the end of the day, you can just put the little plunger back in there. And this keeps the glue in great condition. And having the extended in there means you can just keep this at room temperature. All right, and you don't have to refrigerate it. So this recipe is also available as a download. All right, so you've got that on the recipes and templates. Now the flexi paste, this is my flexi paste. It's a starch-based paste. It comes in white. At the moment it comes in 400 gram, which is just a little less than 8 ounce packages, and 200 gram, which is a little bit less than obviously 4 ounces. And this is the paste sizes it comes in, and the paste is obviously also available. It's going to be available soon in this is the 200 gram pack. It's also going to be available too in a little 100 gram, which is approximately 4 ounce package. All right, and so those are the sizes it comes in, and it also comes in at the moment colors, 3 colors. It comes in white, it comes in foliage green, which I'm going to be using for the leaves. Also comes in peony pink, and also comes in red. And I have some YouTubes on mixing colors and things like that, because if you add a little bit of the peony pink to white, you can make it really, really pale, or a sort of a medium pink for roses, very, very pale for cherry blossoms. And the red can also be used to make almost like a peach color. And the green, of course, also can be diluted by mixing with the white. And I have 9 new colors coming out soon. So I have colors like black, a dark green, a eucalyptus, a blue, a yellow, burgundy, sort of eggplant color, beautiful purple. And so those new colors will be coming out in a few weeks' time. All right, we'll be posting information on the website about that. Now, FlexiPaste is unique in its property. You can watch a sort of video where you talk more about this. But basically, when you make flowers with classic gum paste, once the flower petals are dry or the leaves are dry, they're solid. All right, they also become very brittle. So the advantage of the FlexiPaste is that the paste actually stays flexible. For example, this coming in here, this is a rose that I made in February, and you can see that the petals are still flexible on that. This shows, for example, a dogwood. This was actually made in January, and you can see the petals still have give on those, and so it stays flexible. I made this for Cake International. It's a feather done in Katie Sue feather mold, but again, you see how it's still flexible, all right? And when you're using it to cover things like stems, all right, so you can cover stems of roses and things like that. This was actually made in February, and you can see I can still actually bend this, you see, and this is covered with, and as you will see, you can use a wet finger and you can actually cover this with paste. I do that in a strip and round like a candy cane, and you can rub it over the wet finger and it will stay flexible. So for example, if you're not sure what angle you want your callies or your tulips, you can cover the stems and then you can bend them to whatever shape you want to, you see, and it stays flexible. Now in cake, you can use it. This bow was made on February the 5th, and you can see here, this shows a bow, and this bow, and you can see that the tails of the bow, they won't collapse, but they stay flexible, you see? So it means that you can make things. This was also done in February. It's getting a little harder now, but you can see I still was flexible. So this would be like a chain for a Chanel purse, for example. So it's a really, really useful product, not only for flowers, but also for cutting out letters, for bows, and different applications to use on cakes. Now, when we use the FlexiPaste, it's very much like you would gum paste, all right? So it comes in a pouch cut off the top, and obviously you've got a vacuum. This is like a Mylar bags, and these bags you can obviously also, I use these for smaller paste now when I'm doing classes. You get these on for example, on Amazon. They're just Mylar bags. You can buy an assorted pack or different sizes, like 50 or 25 of them in different sizes. But it's a great way to keep your gum paste, modeling chocolate, all different things like that, obviously, so they don't dry out because they're thicker than regular bags. Now, when you take the FlexiPaste, it has a very nice fragrance. It actually has a rose and lavender, so it's very much a sort of a spa-like experience. And this is the paste, all right? It's a starch-based paste, and it feels a lot finer than gum paste, which is powdered sugar or icing sugar based. All right, so when you use the product, you take some off, and you're just going to give it a little knead, all right? So, and just seal the pouch up as you would any other paste. All right, you take the paste out. Now, the unique thing about this is that when you're using this, just like gum paste, all right, or pastry, think of cookie dough, pastry, roll it out, you take the scraps, you re-knead them, roll them out again. You know, gum paste, when it's exposed to the air, is same. So if you were making, say, flowers and you roll the paste out, you take the scraps, you knead them up, re-roll them out. After 2 or 3 times, the paste is going to get a little bit tough. So all you do is you just use water. In gum paste, we use often egg white added to make it more elastic and looser. Here, you just literally just dip the paste in a little bit of water, and you just knead the water through there. And water we added to this will make it softer. And of course, you can color this from scratch. You're just going to use powder or paste colors, gel colors, and you're just going to color that from, as I said, from any of those colors. And of course, sometimes when we're coloring with gel color, if you're making a dark color, you're going to use a lot of gel. It's going to soften it, which is fine. But as I said, if it feels a little bit dry, just add a little bit. And this is beautiful also for dressing figures. You can use it for figure modeling. And because we can use our wet finger like you would on clay, you actually can blend, like if you attach an arm, you can actually blend the arm on. You're going to see when I do the flower, a bit like when we do that, we're going to use a wet finger. All right, so that's sort of the paste. That's the technique for the paste. Now, we're going to start off for making the flower. So in your instructions, it says take a 20 gauge half-length white wire and half-width white floral tape. I'm going to use some white floral tape here, and I've just obviously cut that in my tape cutter. This is my NL tape cutter, which will cut the tape in half, or we'll cut it into quarters. We're using half width, and this is white floral tape, so we're just going to break this off. When we're using floral tape, we're going to stretch the tape a little bit to open up the pores of the tape. On the end of the wire, we're going to go around once just to get started, and then 8 times. You can use a little bit of cornstarch on your fingers, so 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. You're going to use a pair of pliers, and and fold this over and squash this. So this actually is going to make the floral tape bud, first part, and then over the top of that 8 times. So once you've got your hook, you go over the top of that 8 times. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And you're going to come down just in instructions here about half an inch or so and break it off, all right? Because we were going to tape over this green a little later. So just come down a little tiny ways and break off. Then we're going to take a number 8 small ball of white paste. So we're going to use your size guide. Now, size guide, when we send out orders, we include a size guide in the back of the Flower Pro book. There are size guides, paper size guides like this. And also we do sell a plastic one. This is a new plastic one that came out last year. So it makes it very durable. And we're going to take your paste. I've already pre-measured, obviously, the paste out here. And this is in the Mylar bag, but this will keep things really, really fresh. And you're going to measure a ball of paste, which I've already pre-measured, and this is going to be number 8 small. Now what this means is on your size guide it wants to just go through the hole, all right? And you see, so the paste just goes through the hole. That would be classed as an 8 small. Now if you were making, say, 3 gardenias, you would obviously measure another 2 balls the same size. Going to take a little tiny bit of vegetable shortening. I'm just touching my finger on my vegetable shortening here, and just Crisco or high ratio shortening. You can even use solid coconut oil as well. And that is what we call conditioning the paste. All right. Now, if you were making, for example, if you're going to make 3 gardenias, you would put the other 2 balls of paste under a little plastic pot like this, and usually it just stops the balls of paste drying. Now, the other unique thing about the FlexiPaste is it's not as time sensitive as gum paste. So this is really perfect for those of you that are beginners, just starting in sugar flower making, because you don't have any worry about the paste drying too quickly. You've got the air on here, and as we have on most of the year, and so obviously air conditioning will dry the paste out, but this is really, really easy to use. Now this is the flexi glue. So as I said, you know, I'm taking a little plunger off. I'm using a little brush here, and the brush is going to go into the flexi glue, and you see then I can just use the rim of that to get rid of the excess glue. I'm going to brush the flexi glue over the top of the wire, and I just keep my wire in a wet washcloth. That just stops it drying out. Or you can use, when I teach a lot of the time, I use a little zip top bag with a wet wipe in it, and then just keep the glue brush in there. All right, and so I'm just going to just take this, and I'm going to push my floral tape bud into there. Use a little bit of cornstarch here on my fingers. I'm just going to mold this around. I'm going to make it into a basic cone shape. And then I'm going to use my rose cone. This is my rose cone mold, which I use to make, you know, this is the medium size and a large size cone for roses, but also for many, many other flowers as well. I use the cone mold like dahlias and different flowers. And so we're going to use the small cavity, all right? And so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to rotate this into the cavity. Now you can see this is going to be a little bit more paste than we need. And so the excess paste will just come like, almost looks like a balloon at the bottom, all right? So you're just going to cut that off, that excess paste off. Just trim that off. There we go. Just remold that around the bottom. You can do that another time if you want. So that would be how we would make a small rose cone, all right? But when we make the gardenia, what we're going to make is we're going to make it a little bit more like a sort of a sausage shape, like a fat sausage shape, all right, an oval shape. Doesn't want to be as wide in this part here. So in your instructions, it says now we're going to mold the wider part of the cone into more of a bean shape, 3/4 or 20 millimeters long. So all you're going to do is where it's a little wider, you're just rolling that into a sort of like a bean shape. And you can do that like by holding with your fingers like this. All right, so no, the top is going to be lose its point because we're going to be molding that a little bit now. But you see how you're making it more of a sort of a bean shape. And it wants to be about 20 millimeters, the main part of the cone, about 3/4 of an inch long. All right, once we get to that stage, we're going to take your companion tool. Now the companion tool is sold with the Ultimate Filler Flower. It's sold on its own, and then we also sell the little companion tool and mini pad combo. All right, so we sell that as a package, which I'll be using, and also we sell this separately. This is commonly known now as the Nick Stick. All right, and it's a great little tool for cookie decorating, all sorts of things, because it's flexible. This point is great for royal icing work, and as I said, you texture with this, as you'll see. You've got a shaft and then a little balling tool as well we use for a lot of flower making. And we have lots of fun things, like this is my little holder, accessory holder. So this is made to hold the actual companion tool toothpicks. I use this for acupuncture needles, my cookie scribe needle, or your paintbrush. So it's good just for those little smaller tools that you have maybe on your table. Now we're going to divide the top of this. All right, so the top of this is going to be divided into 6. So with needle tool end of the companion tool, aka Nick Stick, mark the top into 6 sections, coming down about 1/3 of the way down. All right. So what we're going to do here with the companion tool, I'm going to mark one side, and then directly opposite, I'm going to come down about 1/3 of the way down. All right, can we come in a little tighter, please, Scott? And then you're going to go another 2 in between. So it'd be a bit like dividing a cake or a cookie into 6 sections. And then, so we divide it into 6, all right? And then you're going to go in a little deeper, but just about 1/3 of the way down. 3, 4, 5, 6. All right. and we're going to twist this. So you're just going to twist it slightly there like so. So you get this little spiral on the top there. All right, and this is going to be the top of your, and you're just going to let that dry. All right, so this is one I made earlier, and just and then before we put it to dry, we're going to then, it says there, twist and then remark. So once you twist it, you can then remark into there. So you're almost like working through at an angle, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, and then you're using a needle tool, and you're just going to scratch some little lines onto the section. So you're using the needle tool end, and what this is going to do is going to emulate the veining that we have on the petals. Okay, so because it looks like obviously a spiral of petals. So you're just going to do that texture on the top there, like so. All right, just put that to one side. I use a food dehydrator, so when I made my step outs yesterday, I just put this in the food dehydrator for about an hour. And but the FlexiPaste is unique in that because it's never going to dry completely hard. All right, so like an hour is going to be more than enough time for that to sit in the food dehydrator, or 2 or 3 hours at room temperature. All right, we're then ready to move on to the next stage. So now we're going to move on to the petals. Now we're going to roll out some paste flat, just because this is obviously a fairly short live. I've already got some paste rolled out. I've got this in my, and this is the Flower Pro flap, all right, which is the same as my regular flap. It's got, obviously this is my Nicholas Lodge one, which has got 2 pieces of plastic in here. This is the Flower Pro branded one, so we have both of them available on the website. All right, so you roll out some paste. Now, of course, you can roll out more if you're doing, obviously, 3 flowers, all right? I'm just rolled out enough for one of these. So you roll out your paste, number 4 on the pasta machine. So I use the KitchenAid pasta machine, which you can see behind me here, all right? So I just put it through number 2 and number 4. I'm just going to put a little cornstarch down there. And I'm going to use the smallest size, the 70 millimeter. These are my Flower Pro cut blossom cutters. The 3 sizes are 70 millimeter, 90 millimeter, 110, and they're on the back of there. All right, so it has on there the 70 millimeter, the smallest one is 70 millimeters, all right, which is 7 centimeters. So we're going to take the, what we're going to do is going to cut out using an NL 70 millimeter Flower Pro small size blossom rose cutter. And I use these for roses, but I also use them for lots of different flowers as well. A unique thing about this cutter, it has what we call a pro cut edge, a really, really sharp cutting edge. But also this is amazing because you can use it to do 10 petals, and I'm going to be using that for the leaves, and I use for dahlias and many, many different flowers. Also things like sunflower calyx. This is a slightly textured, this is my large workboard, a slightly textured surface. So it's good to work on a slightly textured surface. You'll get a clean cut. And we will put our excess paste back into the bag. Because it has the sort of seal on here, it keeps the paste really fresh. All right, so we're going to take that out. Now what we're going to do is we're going to recut this. Now this is unique with this cutter because most cutters you can't see to do this and they won't work in the same way. But what you do is you place this directly over the top and just sort of line that up so it looks fairly symmetrical. So you see it's lined up, and you see now when you cut, you pull away the excess paste, we tap there, you see you have now a daisy. Now there are 3 sizes of this cutter. For example, in my Flower Pro Ultimate Members Club last month in July, one of the projects the students did was this dahlia, and this dahlia was all made with these cutters in this technique, all right, the 3 sizes and also individually wired petals. So it's a great way to make things like sunflower calyxes and all sorts of things. Now, once you've cut that, all right, we've recut that. We're going to cut off 6 petals like a slice of cake using mini palette knife or cutting wheel, and put the other 4 into the multi-flap. So you can use a mini palette knife or you can use a cutting wheel. What we're going to do here is we're going to cut like you cut off here, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. All right, so you're sort of cutting into the middle here. And the 4 petals I'm using here, and it's easy to pick these up. Use your little flap. That's a great way to pick this up. This is the little mini flexi scraper to put it into your flap. All right, so we put those 4 into the plastic flap to stop them drying. All right, so we've got our 6 petals now, And what we're going to do is going to place onto the green firm side of the mini pad and roll across each petal using the shaft of the companion tool, and gently press fan veiner onto petals 3 at a time. So we're going to take the little mini pad. I'm going to lift this up onto the little mini pad using my Nick Stick companion tool. So what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to roll back and forwards to slightly widen these petals. This almost like is just really like on the top half, all right? So I've got this at a very, very slight angle, all right, this stick. So, and I'm working on the edge of the pad here, like so. So it just sort of rolls them to give them a natural shape. Now we're taking the fan veiner. Now the fan veiner is sold separately and also is part of the sunflower. So you can buy this is the sunflower Gerber daisy mold, all right? So when you buy that, it comes with the fan veiner, but we also sell the fan veiner separately, because I'm not using this today in the demo, but we sell the fan veiner separately because I use that, for example, my poppies. With my poppy mold, I use it with my ginkgo mold, and also things like the dahlia was done with that, all right? But this is a great way to vein. Now, what you're going to do here is going to take the veiner, and I'm going to put this onto the petals like that, and I will do 3 at a time. I'm just going to press that on 3 at a time here, like this. So you see, this is going to give you this fabulous veining. As you can see, the veining on the petals there, all right? And then we're going to just make sure that's not stuck to the pad. And then you want the petals towards you. So then it says, with the petals towards you, curl the right-hand side of the petal at its widest point towards the center. So that's the sort of the widest point of the petal. So we're going to use the companion tool. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to roll over the top. So wherever the petal is here, so just put the companion tool, and you see how this is going to curl the petals. Could we come in a little tighter? Scott, thank you. Scott's here, he's helping. See if the camera work. So then we're going to put the 5th one and then the 6th one here. You see? So what I do is I place the stick, and I literally just going to use my finger and just curl the paste over the top. So you sort of like that. So you just curl the paste over the top. All right? All right? And so that's going to curl the edge of the petal. We use this technique for plumeria and lots of different flowers. And so this is, as I said. So now we're going to place on a cosmetic sponge with a hole and brush flexi glue halfway up the base of the dry center. So we have a cosmetic sponge with a hole. So we're just going to place that onto the, and he wants to, where the hole is, he wants to be just inside. So where that sort of V shape is, it wants to just be sort of about there, okay? Because we're going to use the edge of this. Taking your dry center, this is the dry one. So then we're going to take our flexi glue, and I'm going to brush the flexi glue about halfway up. But so when you put this on color, it will look like milk, but it will just basically just dry clear. Okay, so we use this for all of the colors as well. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to thread the wire through just on the edge. So I'm just catching that edge of the paste. I'm going to bring this up, then I'm going to hang it upside down, take the sponge out, and just going to bring the paste around so those petals will come around to meet, all right? So there's not really any seam there, all right? And then what I will do is I will sort of press one petal down, then leave a petal, press a petal down, leave a petal, press a petal down. I'm going to put it back onto the cosmetic sponge with a hole here, all right? Because what we've done is we've created the first 3 petals, and use glue as needed. All right, so you can use a little bit of glue, and these first 3 petals will go on quite tightly, and they will almost go in a spiral. So you see, you're only going to see the very, very tip of the center. That's why you only need to come a third of the way down. But you see how they spiral, tuck inside, and then the 3 remaining petals, I'm going to brush the glue on the bottom part of those. The other nice thing about the flexi glue, unlike egg white that dries shiny, and when you try and dust it, what happens is the dusting powder doesn't stick. This doesn't do that, all right? And then you're going to attach these 3 petals. So all I do is press with my thumb, and this petal comes out. Press with my thumb, petal comes out. Press with my thumb, petal comes out there, like so. All right, so that will then be how you would do And then you can hang that upside down if you need to, if the petals are flopping, but usually with the paste it will just stay there. And just leave that to dry. But as I said, you can hang it upside down for a few minutes if you want to on a hanging rack, or obviously you can just bend the wire over like this and hang that in your styrofoam block. All right, then we're going to take the remaining 4 petals out of the flap and remove 1 petal. All right, so now we're going to take the petals out of the flap here. These are the 3 petals, and we're going to remove 1 petal. So you can use your scissors or cutter, little mini palette knife. All right, and then once we've done that, take the remaining 4 petals, remove 1 of the petals, then widen more than the previous petals, vein and then curl. So what we're going to do is we're going to put this onto here. So these ones we're going to widen a little bit more. So you see how I'm making these a little bit wider, but you see, because the stick is flexible, it works really, really well. And if you have any little extra bits of paste there, you can just use your scissors here, just trim that off. There we go. All right, then we're going to take the fan veiner. Now, of course, the fan veiner adds nice detail to this flower, and it doesn't really take long to do. It's a quick process. But, you know, like I always tell my students, there's a difference between what we do for a customer, and also depending on how much they're going to pay us, and also when we do things for friends and family, how much we love them, which is sometimes not a lot. So, you know, a lot of times, of course, a commercial application in a bakery, you could actually do this flower, but even not do the veining. But this is a quick gardenia. There are, like this, for example, gardenia I made with my Flower Pro Members Club. This was actually made with all individual petals, all right? So the process, these are wired outside petals. So this is more like a specimen gardenia. But as I said, you know, there are many varieties of gardenia. And but the one I'm showing you today is just a quick gardenia, but it's a really good way to show the FlexiPaste, all right? So we've got that, and then we're going to actually just separate those. But I find it easier to do this as a set of 3, because also they stay together, and then you just separate them into the 3 individual petals. All right. Now we're going to take your glue. So with your glue, we will take the glue here, and we're going to brush the glue. So then we're going to attach 3 alternate petals, and then the remaining, cut the part. Brush flexi glue halfway up these petals. All right, so going to go about halfway up with this glue, and then these will just sit in between. So they're really going to go on the same position as the first petal. So you attach them so the tip of the petal is where the wire is. So it means we actually have 9 petals, 3, 3, and 3. All right, so then the next one is going to sit there. All right, and just attach that. And this will just hang upside down for a few minutes, all right, till it starts to hold its shape. And then you're going to just open it out like this, all right? But you can just hang that upside down, or set it on a hanging rack, which I'll be using a little later. All right, so that is, so open up the tips of these petals. So then once we've done that, we're going to make a foil former. All right, so we're going to take these are just the food service sheets like from Dollar Tree, and then actually you don't open it out, just take it out of the box, all right? And this is actually 5 inches across. So what we're going to do is just going to fold that and fold it over like that. So this is going to make a 5-inch square. And we're going to take a styrofoam ball. Okay, this is a 1.5-inch styrofoam ball, all right? And just cut this in half, okay? And we're going to use this as a former. So I'm going to form over the top of the foil like this. Now this is the same way as I did the dahlia, but the dahlia is a little bit of a different shape flower, so I just use a 1-inch styrofoam ball. But we use this shape. Now we're going to use, these are my sticks. NL sticks. These come in a set of 2. There's a white one like a kebab skewer size, bamboo skewer size, and one the pencil size. I'm going to use that in a minute. I'm using this to make a hole. You can also use a cookie scribe needle, all right? And don't use your companion tool, because the end of this is very quite sort of soft and easily damaged, all right? So you wouldn't want to use that to bend the end of it. So using, as I said, the stick or a scribe needle, I'm going to make a hole through the bottom of this. All right, so make a hole through the bottom of this, and I'm going to use a roll of floral tape. So here, You can use a roll of floral tape with the tape attached, or an empty one, just the center part, and that's going to give stability. Now with the FlexiPaste you don't have to do this, it talks about, but if you're using traditional flower paste like gum paste, you would use a bowl. You need to have a bowl big enough to cover this, because obviously regular gum paste is going to dry too quickly when you're building flowers like this, so you would need to have a container. But as I said, in this case we don't need to worry about that because the FlexiPaste doesn't dry too quickly. All right, so we've got the foil former, and then you're going to roll out more paste number 4 and cut out 210mm sizes. All right, so this is the biggest size. Now when we work with flowers like this, or the dahlia I showed you, we're working from the outside to the inside. All right, so what we're going to do is you're going to roll out your paste again through the pasta machine. This is number 4, so all of these pieces are number 4. Just going to put a little touch of cornstarch down there. All right, and then you will so you cut out 2 of these. All right, this is the 110mm 11cm cutter, this is the biggest size. All right, and you're going to put one of them into the flap, and then the other one you're going to use exactly the same sort of technique. Now don't worry if it's not exact, but you just sort of line this up, and so you're going to press this in. But so you could use this to make sunflowers and all sorts of things. And so you see, you're just going to take the excess paste off. Generally when you use cutters like this, just give them a wash just in warm water. It just gets rid of the residue off the paste, and that will stop you. And when you're using the silicone molds, especially when you do some of the molds we use vegetable shortening, I'm not doing that today, but you can usually just wash those in a dishwasher. They're dishwasher safe. All right, so we're going to turn this over, and what we're going to do is going to use the same sort of technique. We're going to cut 6 petals. Okay, 1 2 3 4 5 6. So just like we did on the small one, and then these 4 petals are going back in your bag. All right, because we've finished with those. All right, so this is going to go on to, now I'm going to use my bigger pad. This is my no flip pad, because obviously mini pad is a little bit too small here. Going to put this on, and what we're going to do is going to use now the green stick. Now this first layer of petals are going to, and you're going to make the petals longer and wider using the LL large stick. All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to make the petal just a little bit longer. So you see how I'm just rolling about the end just a little tiny bit to make that a little tiny bit longer, and then we're going to roll this. So then you see making this wider like we did before. We're going to vein this, so taking the fan veiner. Now usually on this big one I found that you can do like 2, 2 and 2 and 2 here, like that. All right, so same concept. And then we're going to use your companion tool nick stick. Now sometimes the petals will fuse together, and if they do, you can just pull them apart, or obviously even just use a pair of scissors. All right, so we're going to take the petal here. So you see I'm just curling at the widest point, so you get that curl on the Gardenia petals, like that. All right, now what we're then going to do is we're going to brush some glue. So it says here, so once we've done that, you're going to then brush easy glue on one edge and form into a shallow cone and place in the foil former. So using a little bit of glue. Now you can either do it on this edge about 1 inch, 3/4 to 1 inch here, or on this side, it doesn't matter. So you're just going to brush the glue, just I'm going about 1 inch down there. And what I'm going to do is going to make it into a shallow cone. So all I do is so the glue is on this side. I just fold it, just press it in there with my finger. All right. So you see what I've done is I've made, looks almost like a 6-petal plumeria. I've just made it into a shallow cone. So you see it's got this little cone part at the top of it. All right, and then all you're going to do is going to, as I said, I found this works really well because it gives stability to this. You're just going to drop that into the former. And then what I'm going to do is just going to use my little nick stick just to sort of give me make sure that's in the middle. and put the petals into there. All right, so you see they're almost like sitting on the rim of this. All right, and it says just to sort of giving you the shape. Now then, what you would do is you then would do the next one. All right, now the next one we do. So it continues. It says then once you've done that, so then you repeat with a second petal, but don't lengthen, only widen. All right, so what you do here on this one here. Got this in a bag ready to go. All right, so this one, all I did is I just widened it. I didn't make it longer and then wider. So this is going to be a little bit shorter, you see. And then once we've got to this stage, we will then use the same technique. Going to put a little bit of glue along there. And I will also put glue on the first one in the middle of the cone. Again, just going to take that, so where that sort of V shape is, you're just going to fold that so it just has a slight overlap. And the easiest way to do it is usually turn it upside down on your finger and then just sort of press that, so you see how you're making that sort of cone shape. All right, now then all we do is you're just going to line this up, so it's going to go in between. So you see it goes in between those petals. Again, just each time find your hole. You see, so what you do is you just find the hole there, and that's going to give you the nice shape. All right, that would be my second one. And then what you do is you're going to then you repeat the process. So all right, so in your instructions then it says you're going to then repeat with two 90 millimeters, which obviously is the next size cutter down, the middle size cutter. The first one made longer and wider, the second one just made wider. So you see what we've done here, we've made actually 4 different sizes. So you see this is the one that's a little bit longer and wider, this is the one that's just wider. So I've got these already made because it's just the same process. But when making this, you know, you can leave that flower like there. It's not going to dry too quickly like gum paste would. So that's where it really is very, very useful. You know, just at Cake Expo in Fort Worth, this 2 weeks ago, I was making obviously filler flowers, but you know, a lot of my students had never made flowers before, and a lot of times when you're doing little tiny flowers, they dry really quickly. So you have plenty of working time with this product. All right, and so you're going to position this into the former. You can use a little ball tool if you need to, and just make sure you go through that. So you see you align the next one. And then our final one is going to go into there like so. All right, and so just line that up, put that in between the petals. Again, just going to line that, make sure. So that gives you your petals. All right, now at that point, by the time you've got those 4 done, your first stage, you see these petals here are fine now. And then all I'm going to do is going to take a little bit of glue and put a little bit of glue at the back of this. All right, so you put the glue on this first stage. And so once completed, brush flexi glue over the base of the first stage, thread through the center, place on top of a drying rack or in a cup with ceramic baking beans to dry. So you're going to now thread this through. And you pull this through, so you see it sits like that. All right. Now there's a couple of things you can do here. You can use like a drinking cup. These are just like ceramic baking beans. You could put rice, you know, dry beans in there. Just gives it a little bit of stability. And if it's obviously a little bit shorter cup, you can just obviously bend the wire. You place it on top of the cup like this, and then you can use some bits of foam if you need to. All right, and you can just put some bits of foam just sort of like there and here and there. You won't need this on every one because you want it to look nice and natural, but you can lift up a couple of the petals and you put some foam pieces underneath those. So your foam pieces would give stability to that. And what you would then do, or the alternative, which is here, you can use like a large drying rack, and these something we sell, and it has a base that this clips into as well. A wooden base that's got clips on it, makes it very stable. You can use the top of a large drying rack so your flower would sit on there to dry. All right, now once it's on there to to dry. Next step is, and you can put the flour also if you have a drying rack. You could the rack, like I have the Excalibur one. You can take all the shelves out, and then the top one has got a grid on it, which you can take the mesh off, and then you can lay that on there and put that in the food dehydrator. All right, and then what you do is dry for 1 to 2 hours, then remove and hang upside down to dry fully. So after this is dried for 1 to 2 hours, or about 45 minutes to an hour in a food dehydrator, you're just going to turn it upside down and remove your foam pieces. All right, so you take the foam pieces out from here. All right, and then you just let it dry completely, because obviously the air is not going to get to it in the foil former, and you're just going to then hang it upside down to let it dry completely. All right. So that's that is the making part of the obviously there of the flour. All right. And let it dry to 1 to 2 hours. Then what you do is once you've done that, you take a number 6 small ball of paste and press into the medium Flour Pro ovary. Now we're going to use the, this is my Rose Calyx Trio, and I'm using a number 6 small. Now the paste sizes I'm using in this particular class are all small sizes, all right? When you use, if you watch a lot of my other videos, sometimes we use the regular size. If it said like number 6, all right, it didn't say 6 small, that would mean the ball of paste would sit into the hole, now 1/3 below the hole, 2/3 above, all right? When it says obviously like, so that would be, just to show you, this is actually a number 6 regular size, all right? So if you're following the directions, and you see it's about 1/3 below and about 2/3 above. But here we're going to use a number 6 small, so that would be obviously, would go through the hole, okay? Now, this is just because I have this product, I'm using it. It just doesn't mean you can't make gardenias without having this, because you can also, as it says there, you can just take a number or use a 6 small ball of paste and flatten the top. But this is actually the ovary that we use. So we're going to use the mold here. So we're just going to press that into this mold here. And you see what it's going to do is going to make like a little cup shape, you see? And when you flex this out of the mold, you can make a hole in there. You flex that, so you see you've got like a little ball. So it's basically like a half a ball. You're going to make a hole through that. All right, and then we're going to flatten top, and then we're going to then make a hole using the shaft of the companion tool. So all right, so make sure you put your shaft of your companion tool through there. All right, we're going to brush a little bit of glue on the top of that. Now remember, this is obviously, I've got a dry one, you know, so you obviously let that dry a little bit. So then what we're going to do is we're going to slide this up the wire. Now this is going to give the extension onto the bottom of the flower, because a gardenia flower has an extension on it. So you see, you put this on almost like a sort of a calyx. Then what we're going to do is once that goes on, so slide up the wire, attaching the back of the flower, use the shaft to the companion tool to blend, and a little water to create a seamless finish. So you're just going to blend that in with your companion tool. And you see then we're going to, this will be like if we're doing the stem. And then you're going to use a wet finger. And you see I actually can use my wet finger here like you would clay. So you think about when you're working with a potter's wheel. That is going to give you this extension on the flower, because you can't make the center with this extension on it because you couldn't build it. But see, you just use a wet finger. This would be like how I would do a figure modeling, and you see, just use that. You can just blend, and it will make a perfect back to your flower, you see? So that sort of blends on, and that will just blend on as part of it. And then you're just going to let that dry, okay? And that's how you make that's how we make the little back part on the flower. I'm just going to quickly show you the bud before I do the calyx, and then the leaf, and then finishing off. All right. Now, when we make the flower, I'm going to show you obviously the center of the flower. We made the number 8 small with the cone mold. We're doing the same here. All right. So when you make the bud, you repeat the floral tape bud as the flower center. Use the same process, but you hold the wire at an angle. All right, so when we do the flower bud, all right, so you basically just going to make your number 8 small, make it into a basic cone shape. All right, Now, when we did we put it right into the rim. Here, you're holding it at an angle like this, all right? So that you're actually just using the top part of the cone. So you're just going to go around, rotating it around in the cone, because we're going to, we don't really want to sort of get too much of a defined base, because what we're going to do is here, we're going to now work this down. So this is like if you've ever been on a farm and milked a cow or a goat. It's the same technique. It's a stretch pull, stretch pull. So you're just going to bring this down, all right? And then once you've done that, this wants to be a length here is about 1.5 inches. So it wants to be about 1.5 inches from top to bottom. You see, and what we've now done, we've created what we had on the bud, that extent on the flower as an extension on the bud, all right? Because this is actually the shape of a bud and flower back. And then we're going to do the same technique. All right, so what you would do is you would then do the same technique. So you divide it into 6. All right, then you go in a little deeper, you twist it, and then you're going to scratch it. And I've already got one here. This one has already got a calyx on, but it's the same technique, but you see it's just going to have that extension on the base of it. All right, so as I said, that will be how you would make your bud. Now moving on to the calyx. All right, so the calyx, we're going to tape the stems using half-width light green floral tape. So when we use the, so here on the flower and the bud, it's just going to get my half-width green tape, just here. Here we go. So have some half-width light green floral tape. So what I'm going to do here is I will tape the flower and the bud. So all you do is you start your floral tape, go round, slide that up to meet the flower, and tape down, usually about halfway down with floral tape. And you do the same on the bud. You do this before the calyx goes on. Then we're going to use the green paste. So what I'm going to do is I've rolled out some green paste number 5. Now this is the foliage green, all right? So this is the foliage green paste that we have. And just going to use a little daisy cutter and pop that out, and that will give you a little daisy shape. This is the Peony daisy, all right? So one of the plunger sets. So it's the daisy there. And then you're going to use your, we're going to use the, here for the calyx. So foliage green number 5, cut out Peony daisy. This is the 1 3/4 inch, 45 millimeter. Using scissors, cut off 3 petals like a slice of cake, and repeat, put in extras in multi-flap. Then cut each petal in half and place on the green side of the pad. All right, so what we're going to do here, I'm going to take the, so we're going to take 3, going to cut off 3, like a slice of cake, and you do that again and again and again. So obviously you can cut, obviously you can do another, you can actually do 4 calyxes out of this because there's 12 petals, all right? So you could actually even cut it in quarters as well. And that would be, so then what we're going to do is going to take each of these and cut them in half again. So you see how I cut them in half again, put them on the little pad here, and I'm going to just widen it slightly. So what I'm doing is I'm just rolling with the shaft of the companion tool here. So you see how I've actually got the little calyx there, like that. I'm going to put it on the cosmetic sponge. This one is just a plain one. And we're going to work around this. So with the calyx, then you place on cosmetic sponge, and with needle tool work from the tip to curl the calyx. So from the top of the calyx, you're going to come down here like so. And what this is going to do is going to incurve it, but also give it this pointed top. You see? So you're going to get your calyx. Now you're going to brush your glue around the solid part, and about 1/3 of the way up the 6 petals, parts of the calyx, okay? And what we're then going to do is put this on the, so we're going to wrap around the flower 1/2 inch down the stem to form a cone, then slide up the wire. Think of this a little bit like a Christmas tree skirt, all right? Because this is obviously narrow here, it's not going to go all the way round here. So what you actually do is you're going to, when you put this on, all right, you're going to put this on, so literally you're about, as you can see, you're actually up the wire, all right? So you're going to do this about 1/2 inch up the wire, you're going to come around, and then you slide it down. So you see you slide it down to sit on the base of the flower. Now with your companion tool, you can then just go around here, just put that on. So that sort of just fits around the back of the flower like this. And again, you can use a little wet finger just to sort of join that. So it's actually that on the flower it's fitted, so it's just fitted around that like extension that we put on the bottom of the flower. Now when you do this on the bud, all right, you do the same, but on the bud, once it's on there, you open it out like, for example, a cage. Now this is where the flexi glue is amazing, because you know the flexi glue, I just did this a couple of hours ago, but the thing is, after a week or that, you'll be able to touch that, and it will be, you know, for example, like this is like a real fine leaf, but you see how I can touch that, and you see how it's got flexibility. For example, on this rose, this is actually the yellow rose of Texas, but you see these little tiny thorns. These were cut, let me see those in camera. You can see those little tiny thorns there. Those were cut, but you see I can touch them, and they're actually flexible, so they're rubbery. So, you know, that's sort of obviously if you're too rough with them, but as I said, that's the big thing with it, that the calyxes won't become too. And you see this was made in February, and I can still bend that stem to whatever size I want. This has got covered leaves and covered wires onto there. At Cake Expo, I was demonstrating the Phalaenopsis orchid. Now Phalaenopsis orchid, this is really problematic, this flower, because the little tiny tendrils there, but you see how I can actually touch these, and you see they're still wiggly, all right? And so that's where, as I said, it's really nice. You won't ever have any drama with things breaking, all right? So they will stay really nice and flexible. And the last little part to show you, it's just going to show you a leaf, and I'll show you the finishing off. Now I'm just going to show you one leaf, all right? This is done in the same way. So you roll out the foliage green, number 4, cut out the 3 sides of the blossom. Now what you do is you cut and then recut, all right? And then what you would do is you just use your mini palette knife, and you just would cut into the 10, so this would give you 10 leaves, so it depends on how many you want. So you see this is the medium size one. Now obviously there's a big one and a smaller one, and this shows you these are just like done in the same way, but just as foliage. See, that's the small, that's the medium size, that's the large size, all right? So this technique is a great way to make plain leaves for lilac, for just filler leaves, jasmine, and all sorts of things. So you cut those out, obviously you put the rest of them into your bag, and then you would take a wire. So we're going to put it into your plastic flap. I'll show you in my grey flap because it's a little bit more contrasty than the green one. So you just put it into your flap here like this, and all you do is you just thin around the edge. So you just thin in around the edge of the leaf like that. You can obviously line them up and do all of them at the same time. Take one out at a time, and then what we do is you're going to take a wire. Now generally in classes, when I use wires, I have them on a magnet. It's a really easy way to keep them. This is a 28 gauge green wire. I'm going to put a little bit of glue, and see, this, when we use the glue, you can just come off with the excess here, and then we're going to put the wire about halfway into the leaf. So you just hold it between your thumb and your first finger. So I've got the flexi glue on here, and you're just going to come here, and then we're going to take when you're using this leaf mold, I'm going to use a little bit of Crisco on here. So I'm just going to use the back of my hand just so I get a really tiny amount. This is a stencil brush. I keep it for this purpose. I just put a little bit of, as I said, release on there. And you put the wire into here. Now you can watch on my Flower Pro on katiesuedesigns.com/Flower Pro. There are about 80 YouTube videos. Most of those are housed on my YouTube channel, which I talked about earlier, and it's on the download. So you can watch how I use a lot of these different products. But you put this in the right hand side, and this has got obviously a channel to accommodate the wire. And you just go over with the left hand side, and you're just going to press down here like this, and you see this is going to give you a perfect leaf. All right, then when we take this off out of the veiner, you see you've got the veining on the back of this, and then all I'm going to do is going to take the, so either on the green side or I work with the needle tool end on the small one, so you're just going to work around the edge of the leaf here, and that's on the back of the leaf with the raised ridges, and then you're going to, on the small leaf, you would use the pointed end, the needle tool end, and on the medium large, the shaft, you hollow the base, you pinch it like a taco shape, and you're then going to put this into a former to dry. This is convoluted foam formers, all right, and that's how you would make the leaves. And it's a really sort of quick way to make plain leaves very, very easily. Just very, very quickly, just finish off the last couple of things. All right, the coloring is very simple on this flower. It's going to use, for the coloring, we're going to use here. So coloring, if you go to the next page, the last page there. So dust all over the flower with super pearl. All right, so I'm going to use pearl dust here. This is some super pearl, so I'm going to use some pearl. So we're just going to brush over the flower, all over. Now this is what we would use on flowers like gardenias, calyx, gardenias, lily of the valley. So you're just going to put a little bit of pearl dust all over that, because when that is steamed, it's going to give it a waxy look. All right, so pearl dust. We will also would do the same on the calyx as well. On the bud. All right, so we're going to put pearl dust onto the bud as well. But you see, when that's dry, that's not going to break off. It's going to stay flexible. So it's a really unique, has unique properties. We're going to take pale daffodil. Now this is daffodil yellow, all right, and I put a lot of cornstarch in it, so it's just a really, really pale daffodil color. And I'm going to put a little of that just into the flower center, because the gardenias have this sort of creamy yellow center in there. Obviously you don't want to make it too strong, so it's just really an ivory color. This is the color I'd use on for example, a magnolia. And then I take on the bottom of the flower, I'm going to use a little bit, this is light apple, all right. These are my new dust in powder collection. These are actually manufactured by the same company that do the FlexiPaste. I'm going to put a little of that just around the back of the calyx, and then the base of the flower here as well. And then the final color is going to be the prairie green. So I'm going to use a little bit of prairie green, which is a slightly darker color. So that will go, you can see a bit easy on here, that will go almost between the calyx, just a little bit up. So you have the sort of the softer green and then this green here. All right, and that's going to be the flower and the bud. And then these will be steamed. All right, so steaming these is going to make them waxy looking, and we're just going to steam those. So steam or with the steam to set the color, and then just while that's steaming. For the leaves, now when you do the leaves, you would tape the base of the leaf. All right, so with your green, so all you do is you just take your green floral tape and just going to use a tape, slide this up to the bottom, tape down, and then on so on the smallest leaf here, which would be obviously this would be this size, I'm going to brush this all over with lime green. Okay. Switch that off. And then I'm going to use some moss green, which is slightly darker. I'm going to brush that down the center. All right, front and back, and around the edge of the leaf, front and back. And then when you do the larger leaves, which I've already got one done. You do the same, but you're using apple green and then moss green, because the gardenia leaves, the younger leaves, are a little bit brighter, so they're a little bit of a lighter color. All right, so that's why we use lime and moss, and on the larger, medium and large ones, you're using apple and moss. All right, just going to move this out of the way. And then what we will do then for the, bring in your steamer. So on the gardenia, we're then going to steam that. And you steam this, okay? And on the leaves, you steam those to set the color. And obviously when creating the leaves there, we would then, you can use leaf glaze or spray glaze. So this is just sprayed over the leaves. Obviously Sydney uses this to seal her isomold, but you can also use a brush glaze as well. Like this is a brush on leaf glaze, which is diluted confectioner's glaze. So you can use leaf glaze as well if you don't have a spray. And remember, do that in a protected like box or outside or in a trash can. But you see how the small leaf is just a little bit more of a limey color, and the big one is a little bit larger. And of course, you know, I'm really just going to show you the basis of this. You just will put this together. So we just would take your half-width tape. So your half-width tape, just going to tape around, just going to tape down. Of course, you can do like on the other gardenia I have here, I've got 2 leaves there, but you see the sprays. And then of course, you know, you put this in, and of course you don't have to use the foliage, and you don't have to use the foliage with the leaves, but then you would put on the gardenia, and you add the leaves. So you put like 1, 2 or 3, however many you want to, on there. Okay, and you're just going to tape that together. But as I said, in a month's time, those petals are still flexible. And so this is where really making, you know, like wired petals and things that had to have flexibility, especially for flowers like roses. Of course, you can use this for any type of flower, but especially on flowers like roses that are often problematic, and we have drama with the petals breaking, you know, because when you're doing a rose and you're using darker color and you're dusting it, that's where they often will, as I said, you have issues with that. So that is the gardenia. I hope everybody enjoyed today's live, and as I said, enjoy the rest of the day. As I said, I look forward to seeing you all next year, hopefully in Austin. Until then, take care. Sweet wishes. Bye.